For those of you who are regular viewers to this vlog, you'll know that I'm a proud Londoner and will stop at nothing to work in London with London musicians, whatever the budget. The British orchestral scene is in that perfect juncture between affordability, speed and just pure talent. The quality of the instruments and the studios are second to none. Problem is, for people like you and me, getting into these spaces to record these orchestras when we're on lower budgets, we want 3 hours, 6 hours or a single day, can be really difficult, particularly during the blockbuster season when the studios block book studios like Air and Abbey. What's more, Angel Studios has closed and now we've got Netflix, Apple, Amazon creating a profusion of need for orchestras. Now, this film was made several months ago during lockdown, and it's about a really exciting new project. What if I was to tell you there's an alternative, and that alternative isn't going east? Imagine being able to draw on a similar pool of talent taught in the same schools, from the same orchestras, and in an area that has a culturally rich diversity so that any dots that you throw at them, they can play and sight read fast. And imagine, even better still, if their first language was English. Well, there is such a place, and that's Glasgow. And we're here at the Clockworks Hall, which is a work-in-progress project to bring Hollywood scores to this part of the world, a post-COVID world where we're more used to dialing in, or attending if you want to. So, what's this all about, gentlemen?
Well, this morning we're going to see what Joe's been up to in this beautiful old church, trying to convert it to a scoring stage so we can record orchestral stuff and studio stuff.
So we've been setting up over the last 3 years to kind of provide orchestral sessions for film and game TV composers up here from Glasgow and Scotland areas. And we met David 3 years ago as well, wasn't it?
3 years, 4 years almost.
Yeah, so we've been developing this new venue. That's an old church from the 1950s, I think, where it's got beautiful acoustics. So we're just getting that ready to kind of come online.
So basically, Clockwork Sessions it's a one-stop shop. Is that correct?
We're a kind of production company as well. So we contract the orchestra, the Scottish Session Orchestra, and then we will organise and direct the sessions. So I conduct the orchestra, and Cobus produces, and David's the recording engineer.
My heart is so kind of set in London, but obviously this is my new home. And you came to kind of evangelise the quality of musicians up here, and made me realise that it's basically drawing from a similar pool. Is that correct?
Me and Cobus were actually at college here. We studied up here, and then Cobus has worked here for the last, since
22 years, probably.
22 years. So the kind of network of players and the kind of pool of talent here is amazing.
Buildings are one thing, but actually having the people is kind of vital. Yeah. And that experience, you can't build it overnight, unfortunately.
Now I know you're not allowed to talk about it, but mega Hollywood blockbuster came knocking this year, didn't it? And you did something in here, didn't you?
Yes, that was very, very exciting. Again, we had to draw from all over Scotland, guys coming down from Skye and from the islands, but put them all in the same room, so absolutely amazing.
Amazing. Oh wow, so it's a big old space, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the Abbey Road parquet floor.
And originally we still had that window was open up there, or pulpit up there, which is still in place in the other room. To say, make this almost like two studios, or TV space and a studio through at the back, or strings through here, strings through there, that kind of thing.
I think that what's interesting at the moment is there's a real blurring between TV, film, music. It's just called content these days, and I think that not making provision for visual, I think, is a real mistake, because there are so many opportunities these days with online content.
Totally. If you look at Leith, where they're building these beautiful sound stages for massive film production, no one really thinks of the audio. So the idea is we do all this film stuff in Scotland. They're throwing millions at it. Calvin Grove, did you see that? 12 million or something. They're just trying to get more and more spaces for film, but the music always gets done in London. You think, well, why don't you just make one space that we can also get used to? And we've demonstrated that we can, we have the talent, we have the skills, but no one's thinking of the facilities. So that's why this is cool, because it will actually house both.
So a lot of thoughts kind of been put into like how do we kind of keep a certain amount of flexibility without shooting ourselves in the foot on a particular voting area. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what we're looking at in the future. Everyone's wanting to get back to a concert, but for the moment, a lot of our work recently has been kind of picking up stuff that used to be live just to record it for content for online. And we don't know if that's going to change. And we might go back to a normal, but it might be different in a month before. We just don't know at the moment.
I'm sure the question on everyone's lips in there is how many people can you fit in at the moment and then in the future?
I think 30. Britain allows 30, yeah.
I suppose it depends on the instruments.
Yeah.
So that's with one man or woman per desk, and then a 2 metre.
Yeah.
But when hopefully times change,
70, 80.
amazing. This feels to me in between Abbey 2 and Abbey 1, so it's bigger than 2. So where are the planned kind of control room areas and stuff?
So we've got a control room that's going to be sort of set up back there. We're hoping to leave the option of having one up there. We'd be looking at kind of basically glassing that off, perhaps leaving a balcony again for filming.
What's really interesting about building a space like this in this day and age is that you can think quite progressively about technology. Whenever I go into the hall at Air Studios, I always comment on the fact they've got one of the biggest Neve mixing consoles in the world and never ever do any mixing in that room.
Nobody can afford to mix in that room.
No, exactly. So what you require for tracking and what you require for mixing can be very different, and obviously with laptops and stuff these days, you can be slightly more dynamic in your approach, I guess.
So we'll focus on the recording, because everybody's going to go home and mix. They've got their own mixers, clients are coming in from around the world, they just want it sent back on the internet and they'll mix there. There's almost no point looking at expense and the maintenance of that kind of stuff here.
Absolutely.
And even at the minimal amount of microphone, cable, preamp in.
Yeah.
And yes, there are times I'm old enough that I do miss a desk sometimes, but for the most part, most of us have been working with it on there for years.
And I think for composers, the days of being able to travel anywhere in the world to go attend your session, so much of it's done now remotely. So to have a facility where you can mix afterwards is kind of optional.
I've been having conversations with lots of music supervisors and composers about what won't go back, and I think that kind of 12 people flying over from LA to London to attend sessions is a thing of the past. Maybe you'd be lucky to get the composer. And whilst it's lovely to attend sessions, it's the highlight of everything that we do, I think the more that time is compressed, and the more that you realise you can work in that way very effectively, I think that bodes well for this project, I imagine.
The idea is to have lighting rigs running from the trusses, but to try and keep the wood for acoustic reasons. So they're actually going to treat the roof from the outside to make it slightly more soundproof. At the moment it's fine, but we had a session here for Sony for film, and suddenly we just heard what's that? And it was a cloud burst, and we could hear. So that's going to be one of the major jobs. The same with the windows. If we treat them, they'll be treated from the outside, not from the inside, because we don't want to lose the.
Trying to keep as many kind of nooks and crannies.
I've always wanted to stick a vocalist in a confessional for a while.
You'll get your wish, because these two are being joined up. I think the wall's been taken out. Yes, it has. Those two have been joined up, and those two are being joined up. These two will just be storage rooms. So those two would become rooms.
So this is a studio-sized recording space.
For all small stuff, we would work in here.
Great feature. What makes London special is it's a melting pot of different. So it's not just the orchestras, it's the opera houses, it's the 80-odd pits or something like that. Yeah. So you get and the jazz scene and the pop scene. So you get this real mixture, and that again is reflected in Glasgow. It's such a rich, culturally diverse, the Celtic connections and stuff.
You're totally right. I've met so many creative people from other countries. Even growing up here, I think I had one friend from Glasgow. Everybody else was from somewhere else. But for some reason, artistic people tend to kind of stay
because it's bonkers. I was talking with a guy called Rick Beato, who's a big YouTuber, and he did this experiment with his son. As he played his son lots of complicated jazz whilst he was in utero, and continued to play really complicated jazz to this kid for the first 2 years of his life. And his kid is pitch perfect beyond, I mean, and that's how Rick became a kind of an internet sensation. He put up this video playing these incredibly difficult chords, and this little boy would go C, D sharp, A, and he investigated it further, and it seems that if you imprint tonality on kids when their brain is still plastic, they become more musical. And there is proof that cultures that have more of a tonal language are more musical, which would explain why Edinburgh is less of a musical city than Glasgow, even though they're only, 40 miles apart, because the Edinburgh accent is monotonal and the Glaswegian is tonal. So that's my theory.
Something I want to talk about is tuning, because this is the first time you guys have been in here since we built and finished the wall. And I'm kind of terrified that they're going to say to me, it's off tune. Obviously we can tune the space, but what are you thinking about the kind of the shape and size? And
Just listening to everyone talk, I'm pretty happy. I can hear diction, I can't hear any extra reflections or...
So the idea is to tie through into the main room. Great stuff.
I mean, given just also, nature's of budgets, the way I think more and more people are throwing in a few players into mock-ups.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we'll probably end up working that room a lot more in the big room.
And are you planning to have a kind of a permanent kind of...
So this is the room that we would probably take permanently.
Great.
So we would do lots of our pre-production here, obviously use it during tracking, recording, and a bit of post-video editing and again, stuff like mixing, David probably do at your studio at home.
For people who would be interested in maybe attending, what monitoring do you have, or will you have?
At the moment we've been living in Dine Audios, but we're probably going to go down the Adam route. It's not a big space here, and I've never liked the huge monitoring. I'm much happier in sort of small and mid-size. And at the moment we're kind of looking at kind of Grace sort of conversion and preamps. Again, it's that thing we're talking just straight in and out. And at the moment I've been kind of using a sort of UAD almost as a digital desk. I can kind of handle monitoring with low latency. I'm still looking for the perfect solution.
I've always been interested in the concept of tracking and just focusing on just tracking. It's not like an occasionally we'll mix here. It's just like we're going to do this one thing really well.
For me, it's the room and the space. I remember in my own career, the first time I made a classic recording was when I put a half-decent microphone in front of a classic performer in a good space. This is going to be much more about tracking than mixing for the foreseeable future. Everybody's mixing.
And even the kind of top TV composers are only getting other people to mix 20% of the time at the moment, which is a shame. It's as much to do with time. And I guess that's also something that you're going to feed into, is understanding what works from a deliverable point of view.
Do you want to look at the balcony?
Yes, please. Oh, wow. Was that kind of unearthed?
we took away panels and we found it, but then when we were building this wall we thought we have to actually put on to and just keep it.
That's amazing.
The colour, it's about nature, it's about chilling out and relaxing, so the colour isn't really required, but it's something we put in to see how it works.
It's gone green, I like it.
Yeah.
So this used to be the kitchen, I presume it'll be again a kitchen, a few couches.
And the big piece of marble we have here will become a big marble place for standing and chatting, so your artists, when they're not performing, will be able to stand here, coffee, places to read and do the crossword, a place just to relax. This will be a VIP area, which, if this is open separately, this would be a kind of
second client area.
Nice kitchen, toilet, and a place where musicians could break out into
They've
space. So this becomes a control room. The floor here slopes slightly. There's a choir.
It's like rake, isn't it?
The guys have kind of done a lot of thought into how you wire the whole place. So there's a kind of duct which we just saw, and all that ducting can allow microphone cables to come here, control room B or control room A. This will become a window. So this guy here would kind of go to the floor, and I'm a wall that's going to be at a slight angle for the kind of cone of vision.
Yeah.
And where Kubis and Adam are standing, if you were sitting on the sofa there, you'd be able to see what's happening in that space.
It's amazing.
It's not in use for control room, this becomes a boardroom. So you can actually have a big board table, the table which we made for David, which was just a kind of, John made that kind of table.
Yeah.
We can do a more sophisticated version of that is a control room table. It's not a control room table, like these wheels, it can become a boardroom table. It means it's got two functions, which means it'll lose some things, but it just makes the room more usable.
Yeah, dynamic.
More functional.
As I mentioned before, this film was made several months ago, and things have moved along since there. And you'll be pleased to hear that I've since done a session that we filmed, so you can see how things have evolved. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now, are the musicians up here cheaper than in London? Well, no, of course they can't be. It's the same musicians' union, it's the same rates. You could argue that maybe the studios are slightly cheaper than Abbey Road or Ayr, but that's not the point. For me, what is so exciting is I get to work with British musicians, whatever the budget, whatever the availability of studios in London. Naturally, I'll want to go back to London as much as possible to work with friends that I've made over the last 25 years. But for me, this enables us to have no excuse not to go live, and that's what I find so exciting about it. A lot of these musicians studied in London, played in orchestras in London, and have simply moved up here for what is arguably a better quality of life. So check out the details in the video description down below. And I mean, a great thing to mention is the session I did with Clockworks was actually just half an hour. They do shared sessions as well, which you can dial into remotely. So plenty of opportunities to to practice your chops working with some of the best musicians in the world. One of those for Clockworks, and thank you so much for watching to the end. Ding that bell to be notified the next time I put a video up. See you next time.